Hello and welcome, guys. We thank you again for joining me as we're on our 2 of 3 in our Freedom and Forgiveness series. Tonight we will be talking about how does not forgiving others affect our lives. So what I've done was I studied on this and I come up with 7 points that I want to talk about how choosing not to forgive will affect your life. So I hope that you enjoyed video 1 of 3, where we were talking about how not forgiving, excuse me, why sometimes it's hard to forgive. So we'll get started here shortly. If you're just joining me, go ahead and hit that like button and share. And don't forget, these series of these talks are just a spin-off of my book, Recreating a Better Me. If you'd like to know how to get you a free copy of this book, just stay tuned to the end of this video and I'll tell you how you can get your free copy. Nevertheless, let's get started. So tonight we just want to discuss, and I just want to share with you how choosing not to forgive others can affect your life. Now, this doesn't mean that all of these will apply to you, but it just kind of gives you a little insight about how important it is that we forgive others. We know that as humans, we make mistakes. Some mistakes become habit, and some habits become lifestyle for us. So we really have to be careful on allowing past hurts and traumas, like we discussed on last night, impact and how much impact it has on the rest of our lives. So, number 1, when you fail to forgive others, it keeps you or it hinders you from enjoying your life. It keeps you or hinders you from enjoying your life. And I think this holds so true. And it almost goes back to where we were talking about the superficial confidence that sometimes we adopt when we're trying to portray a image or a lifestyle to appease other people. And how we feel depends on how they respond to us and the attention that they give us as a result of that. And this can hold so true when we begin to harvest unforgiveness within our hearts. You can't really enjoy your life to the fullest with these thoughts and this anger and the bitterness nagging at you on a daily basis. Because when you're hurt, that hurt has a way of making its way to the front part of your mind, and you see it. And even though we're able to suppress it from time to time, all it takes is seeing that somebody, or going to that one place, or hearing that one sound, or tasting that one food, or smelling that one smell to trigger it all. So that it begins to become like that nagging voice in our heads. So we're not able to enjoy life when we're holding on to something. Because when we're holding on to hurt and anger and that bitterness and who done what to us, we're stuck. we're stuck in that place of our hurt and our trauma. And you can say, well, I'm happy, or you can portray a life of happiness, but all in reality, we're not enjoying life when we refuse or neglect to forgive others. Because when we hold that unforgiveness in our heart, they still have the power. They still have the power to control your day. They're controlling your thoughts. They're controlling how you're going to feel when you go to the game and they show up. And there they are. And you're reliving that over and over and over in your mind. Now, what we tend to do is to put on an image and maybe post a few pictures or whatever it is that we do in today's technology to make it seem like we're living that life. But all in reality, we're not. It's just a front. So when you choose not to forgive, you're not really enjoying your life to the fullest. Number 2, it keeps us from loving ourselves. When we choose not to forgive, our life is impacted because we don't truly love ourselves unconditionally. We still blame ourselves. We still live with the guilt. We still beat ourselves up about it. All because we're holding on to it. I find it hard to hold on to my past, hold on to the anger of who hurt me, hold on to the traumas that I suffered. I'd find it hard to do that and love myself completely and live out my purpose. I just think that would just be a little bit too much to juggle. I think at that point I would still be tied to the past. So I think that we discussed last night that the reason sometimes that we find ourselves into a place of traumatic situations is because we didn't love ourselves, or that we struggled with our identity issues and stuff at that time. So these are all things that will still play a role like a cycle over and over and over in our minds if we continue to choose not to forgive. Unforgiveness is a stronghold. And when I talk about strongholds, this is not something that we can just play patty cake with. Patty cake, baker's man. It doesn't work like that. This is a life and death situation. And I say that to say this. Unforgiveness in your heart is okay for you to live with, but you certainly better not die with it being there. And remember, if you have unforgiveness in your heart, it is literally killing you. It is eating you from the inside out like a cancer. And that's what it does. Because it's all that anger and all that hurt and all that frustration just builds up. And all it takes is just one little something to trigger that so that it begins to boil over and over and over. And that's traumatizing to us. So we can't really fully love ourselves holding on to it. And we can say, oh yeah, I love myself. But when you truly love yourself, you're not going to hold on to things that harm you, that kills you, and that sucks the life out of you. So unforgiveness, when we fail to forgive others, we're not really loving ourselves 100%. Number 3, it causes us to live in fear. Not forgiving others causes us to live in fear. And I'm not necessarily talking about the fear of life or death. We live in fear with the expectation or with the perception that someone else is out to get us. Some of us are still that little girl that was victimized. We still live inside that little girl. We still hold that trauma. And it has governed every decision we've made from the time we were that little girl till today. We live in that fear, hurt and betrayed. And every person that desires to meet us or get to know us, all we can think about is that hurt or betrayal, and we live it behind the fear of that. And so instead of letting somebody in to love us and to show us something different, we hold on to that. We hide behind that fear. We go in it looking for a way out and never really giving it a chance. So we find ourselves in a cycle that when somebody begins to get too close, we fear the worst instead of embracing the good things. So it affects us. It controls us. Excuse me, guys. Number 4, it takes away from our identity. When we don't forgive others, it harms our identity. It takes away from who we were created to be. Excuse me. I apologize for that. Remember that I said that sometimes we identify ourselves based on the labels, based upon the labels that we've taken on from the trauma or from the betrayal. So it robs us of who we are and who we were created to be. If we are a child of God, like so many of us profess, we take on His character. His character is that He forgive us all. He died, was buried, rose again. He conquered it all. And He had all of this on His mind when He done that. So there's nothing too big that we can't forgive because we're connected to Him and He forgave. He is forgiveness. So how can we wear our true identity of being like our spiritual connector if what we really have within us is unforgiveness? It doesn't match up. And I know that these things that we have to forgive sometimes can be very difficult. We talked about that, how difficult it can be, and the steps we have to take, and what causes that. We talked about all that. But we know that we have to be connected to a spiritual source that is greater than ourselves. And with that, anything is possible. So we have to be willing to be so aware and so sensitive to our spiritual connector that we're certain that we're not being robbed of our identity due to choices that we're making to try to impose harm back on somebody else or to control somebody else because of the pain that they inflicted on us and choosing not to forgive. So if we choose not to forgive, it affects our life because it takes away from our identity. Okay? Number 5, it alters our perception. And when I say alters our perception, it's because we form thoughts based upon the experiences we have and take in through our 5 senses. That means through the things that we touch, the things that we see, that we hear, we smell, we taste. All of that, our environment, when we are exposed to trauma, things that cause us harm or to feel some kind of way, when we are exposed to this, we produce thoughts. So not forgiving people continues to affect our thoughts and how we process information. And how it does that is like what so many of us do today. We see something and it reminds us of something, and then we pass judgment without even knowing what the situation is. But it's because we have been so conditioned through our own experiences that we see through the lens of the very thing that we choose not to forgive. And it alters our perception. Have you ever thought something, and because you thought something, when you seen it, you assumed that that's what it was? And a lot of times, it's not even really what it is. This is why. Our experiences produces thoughts. And so therefore, when we choose not to forgive, whatever it's based on, our perceptions are altered because of what our life experiences have been. My husband's working late tonight. Oh, he must be cheating because I've been cheated on. You can't trust him. You can't trust a man. We're so quick to say it. We're so quick to think it. We're so quick to be so insecure because someone cheated or someone betrayed us. Whatever the situation is, it's an ongoing cycle, guys. Ongoing. So I hope that I've made that clear on how it alters our perception. And so oftentimes we confide in people whose perceptions are also altered, and they're also bitter, and they're also haven't dealt with their things, that they portray their opinions upon us. And sometimes it can be farther from the truth. Number 6, it controls our mindset. No matter how you slice it, unforgiveness is not a positive. And there's nothing you can do to make it a positive. And if that is what controls your mind, your mindset is negative. You can't get a positive from a negative. It doesn't work that way. So When you are not willing to forgive others, or forgive yourself even, you're living in the negative. It's controlling your mindset. It controls how you make your choices. It controls decisions you make. It controls you from day to day. The only person we can escape in this life is ourselves. We can't escape us. We ought to be doing the very best we can every day to improve us. That includes what we choose to watch on TV. That includes the conversations we have with our friends. That includes where we go. That includes what we're listening to. It includes everything, what we put in our bodies. That's all controlled by our mindset. We all want to be the best we can be. And a lot of times we say we want to be the best and that we're doing our best, and it's just words that we speak because our mindset is so far gone and so full of junk that we don't know which direction to go in a lot of times. There's a lot of things that sound good and seem right to a man, but what it does really is lead to destruction. It's far from it. Okay? So I can't explain how important it is that you really take a look at this and really ask yourself, is what I'm holding on to and trying to hold over somebody's head, is it really worth it? Is it really worth me cheating myself? The person that I'm supposed to love above all things? Is it really worth me living this life and being miserable and then dying and going to a hell? Because I do believe that hell is real. And I do believe that some things is okay to live with, but it's not okay if we die with it. That's just my belief, not to offend any of you, but that's my belief. And so, being that I believe like that, I refuse to allow something such as unforgiveness to keep me living in a state of where I'm cheating myself. It's not fair to me. Because if I'm using unforgiveness as a way to keep somebody else down, my mind have to be off anyway. Because don't you know that if you use that unforgiveness as a way to control somebody else or to continue to hurt and continue to hurt and manipulate and control somebody else and hold that over their head, don't you know you have to stay there and hold them down to keep them in that spot? So no one's moving forward. And a lot of times we're harvesting all this unforgiveness and our minds are so twisted, we don't even realize that these people have forgotten about it and gone on about their business. And we're the only ones that's sitting there in that hurt, sitting there in that bitterness, sitting there in that anger, trying to control someone else. And they're living their lives. They're going to be who they're going to be. And here we are plotting. That's why it controls our mind, because we're thinking of another way that we can get them back. No, how about think of another way you can get yourself together and move forward? The greatest thing you can do is live your best life. That's the best way to get anybody back, to live your best life. And not necessarily with a motive, or ulterior motive of look at me now, because that's not what it's all about. because that's still twisted. You ought to be living your life, your best life, because that is what you were purposed in life to do. Not try to get somebody back, not try to pay them back. And I know that that's kind of the state I was in for years. And as a result of that, suffered in depression and so many other mental health issues as a result of it. That's depressing. To lay down in your bed at night and all you can think about is how you can inflict or impose harm on somebody else because they did you wrong. What we ought to be thinking about at that point is praising the Lord our God for bringing us out and bringing us through. That we didn't end up in a cemetery or a jailhouse or a penitentiary or whatever, nut house. Because I can see some traumas are so great, some people wasn't so lucky. Right? Still holding on to that job that let us go. And woe is me and pity parties. Want to hold on to that. Thank God that it did happen. And that it happened when it did. Because that just pushed you just a little bit farther into your destiny. If it was created to break you, we'd have been broke by now. But we're still here. We still have breath in our body. Everybody that went through what we went through, they didn't make it. And if they did make it out, they didn't make it out as well as we are. So you're going to let unforgiveness control your mindset? Do you see the difference between the positive and the negative? And how it's so easy for us to fool ourselves thinking that we have a positive mindset when we really don't? Remember that I said the way you can check your mind and the condition of your mind is that you always consider what your motive is behind it. Your motive will tell off on you. Your motive will tell off on you. Because if you don't have the right motive when you make a decision, then that tells you that the direction of your mindset is not right. Because a positive mindset does not have ulterior motive. It doesn't need to prove anything to anybody. It just needs to be what it is. And the only way we get that mindset is that we're intentional. This is a mindset we have to develop. We have to continue to feed it good stuff. Because it's not going to crave it on its own. Sitting watching 4 hours a day of soap operas, no, it doesn't do it. Watching all the sex and violence on our social media streams, it doesn't do it. Okay? We have to be intentional. Going to church on Sunday mornings, that's not going to do it. Going to church 5 days a week, that's not going to do it. There is a mind that is so sensitive that it's going to absorb everything. And did you know that everything you encounter from day to day, it's after your mind? It's after your mind. And it's going to affect your mind. It's going to get in your mind if you're exposed to it. So this is a quarantine situation we're in. And I told you in the beginning, what better time than now to prepare yourself and to transform yourself and to develop new habits, because we don't know what's coming after this. And that's just the way it is. We think we've seen trauma. How do we know that there's not more trauma down the line? And here we are still holding on to the things that's had us for the past 20, 30 years. Number 7, last but not least, how not forgiving others affects our life is it keeps us from obtaining our highest level of success. I cannot reach my highest level of success if I'm continuing to hold on to the past. And where did we say that all that hurt was? All that stuff that we don't want to forgive. Where is it at? It's in the past. And if we continue to hold on, it's going to hinder us from reaching our highest level. It's just a hindrance. It's baggage. Why continue to drag it around? So I discussed with you tonight 7 ways that our life is affected when we choose not to forgive. I hope that I've said something here tonight that causes us to think and to evaluate ourselves and to make the necessary changes if we find ourselves here in a situation to where we cannot forgive. It's not worth it, guys. It's not worth your life. Take your power back. Tomorrow, we will finish up our Freedom in Forgiveness series by talking about how you can experience your freedom in forgiveness. Remember that this is all covered in the chapters of my book, Recreating a Better Me. It is set up so that you do the work. It asks you the questions, you do the work to help you find those areas that you're stuck and to help you overcome. If you'd like to get your free copy of my book, because you don't already have a copy, I have on my website a tab that you can click and follow the instructions, and you can receive your free copy of Recreating a Better Me. That is at my website at www.triciabraysmith.weebly.com. Go there, just follow the instructions, click on that tab, put your information in, and you can get a free copy of my book. That is my gift to you. All right, guys. I look forward to seeing you tomorrow, 10 p.m. Have a good night.